Turns out he's a major cinephile.
They don't watch enough movies. It's a very simple formula.
And here we go. Nick Nack Goes to the Movies. Welcome to the episode. Well, we got one of the two holiday episodes in. Yes, this was supposed to be the second of two, with Christmas in the past, but here's where we're at. Trying to get another festive episode out, it's just not possible. But like life, everything is a bit in flux. So here's the plan as of right now. Next week, before we turn the calendar to 2021, we will get all of the fun, festive, modern holiday classics episode out to maybe close out 2020 strong. Or you can always come back next year in bright and early December 1st, or literally right after Santa Claus comes down the Macy's Day Parade route. Depends when you start listening to Christmas music, you can pick this episode right back up. You do you. Somewhere along the way, you know I'm bringing back Butensky and Mosho to break down Season 2 of The Mandalorian, as to be expected. We all need some time to process everything that happened in that explosive Season 2 finale, and maybe rewatch the whole series, TBD. But before we do that, we have some brand new movies that just dropped on both HBO Max and Disney+. Wonder Woman 1984 and Soul, respectively. And with these big-name blockbusters available for now, for free on these streaming services, Wonder Woman will eventually go away in late January. 'Tis the season to give the gift of my take on these two brand new flicks. Also, this goes without saying, but huge spoiler alerts for these brand new to the public viewing movies. So I had to start with Soul since, no shade, I really wanted to wrap it all up with Wonder Woman 1984. I'm a superhero movie fanatic or nerd or what have you at heart. But first, let's talk about the latest Pixar Disney film Soul starring Jamie Foxx. Like a real one, not like no music or Eddie Murphy live action Mulan. That doesn't count. And we will get into that way more later. So the last one of these movies, Onward, also came out for most people on Disney+, and it was fine, but it just felt like something was missing. Pretty much nothing has been bad with the latest films, but anything post-Coco, not really having that same spark for me. Still haven't seen Good Dinosaur, but Inside Out before that was an emotional masterpiece of manifestation and portrayal of how we see our emotions, and the end scene in Coco will always get me to cry, no matter how many times I watch it. And I bring up those two because this movie has, in theory, the musical aspect ingrained into the story, like Coco, and the deeper subject material of Inside Out. In this case, your perspective on your life, your purpose in life, and about death and afterlife color me very intrigued. I think Jamie Foxx is a great voice actor as the lead. I quite like the initial arc of his life as in trying to inspire the future musicians as a teacher, but you can just feel his sadness and the weight of it just being made full time, something you'd think would be exciting, but feeling that his hopes and dreams of playing and being a musician by trade are dying as those benefits come in. And his mom wanting the stability for him, but being unaware, or even using the phrase, now you can have a real job. That is a message so many people hear when they're going to something other than a doctor or an accountant, something that doesn't have that semblance of a job or financial security. We weren't all suits or squares. I like to think of myself as an artist to a degree, or at least a creative, who could never be caught working that cubicle life, what. And this movie speaks to that. And when one of his former students gives him that call and he nails his chance, you feel elation for him knowing that he has finally made it and his new life is about to begin. At least that's what he thinks. I think we're kind of on that same fantasy as well of what one moment can change you, which is, you could say that's like the Disney principle, right? Of you're waiting for your knight in shining armor to come take you away. That's the Disney thing. That's the classic wish on a star. Prince and the Frog makes fun of that for sure. And after almost dying a ton, he dies in a very Disney-fied, Pixar-friendly version. That's tasteful. The Great Beyond Afterlife visuals are super chill, and I even get some Fantasia vibes with some more abstract visuals thrown in there, which I'm all about. And then we get to seeing how both the dead and before life worlds exist and kind of work in the governing principles of those. Not unlike the 5 people running your head in Inside Out. And it's not bad at all. They are in a very visually chill place with a nice Girl Scout badge system for developing personalities. And it doesn't have that same snap as Inside Out, but it's still very good. It's tough to compare anything to Inside Out, but how can you not here with the similarities between these? But the mentor setup of him sneaking to be a mentor and having the most troublesome soul to have to teach, it's a fun idea knowing what he already deals with teaching kids. It was supposed to be a child psychologist was the mentor for Soul 22, but it kind of feels like it's a setup for success, even if it's not the life's plan, which, I'm sure is even a subtle reference at the deep things they're trying to get to in this movie. Being a teacher, you always deal with tough kids, and that's something that's definitely shown early in the movie before he gets to be in the soul world. And of recent, he may not realize that impact that he's had teaching the next generation how important that can be, even though one of his former students got him that awesome gig right before he died. And there's something amazing about his realization that his life was maybe not as amazing as it seemed, especially because he was just coming off the elation and high of getting this gig. But even after all that, he still wants to come back and change his life and live what he thinks it should be in this one moment. The quote, you can't crush a soul here, that's what Earth and life is for. I mean, too real, hilarious, too real, sad, phenomenal, great writing. Something a bit funnier, but don't know how they got away with it, was they had a subtle dig at ruining the Knicks players, fans, souls for 20 years. That was objectively hilarious. Sorry, Knicks fans. But how they got that moment in there, don't know, but it was phenomenal, sensational, easily one of the, blink and you miss it, hilarious parts of the movie. But even in life, he's discovering some simple things, our protagonist, our teacher, through his lost soul mentee in Tina Fey. I wasn't sure what they were going to do with her, how her growth was going to change. I think for a while I was kind of, following Jamie Foxx's character just because I think it kind of builds him to be the main character. But as we get to eventually know 22, it feels like it's definitely more of the perspectives of both of them. Seeing her experience all of life's joys when she finally gets into his body. I mean, you're used to seeing her not liking anything and just can't find that spark, that something to inspire her to be in life. I mean, what are you gonna do, right? But and maybe this is something that's another lesson, right? Is if you don't experience life by learning about it, you have to really kind of get in there. It's the whole internship practical thing, right? And just seeing her discover these things for the first times. Obviously there's some scary things, right? Loud noises and everything, but tastes and smells and just seeing life physically happening in front of you. Just listening and talking to others. And yes, all the wonders of food. There's a nice arc for her while Joe is stuck in the cat, but I can feel some of the same feelings on one moment. You can just change your life. And having it make all your troubles just float on away. Pixar finds a way to cut deep and be too real, and as I said, this is not an exception to that. And this is definitely going to be an issue in the movie later, as they've already teased the same mindset as what happens to Lost Souls. And I will share with y'all that I definitely have those same feelings of looking for that one thing to make it all better and not being able to really live in the moment or appreciate the good in front of you. The whole life's a journey thing. Life is a highway. It's all the same, potato, right? And not just running through this whole experience of life, or you'll miss out on all the good along the way. Am I working on it? I swear. Is this another health and wellness episode? I think Apple Podcasts should probably just put me there by default at this point. Top of the charts. The eventual reconciliation of, I can't say him, I can say the two of them, because both 22 and Jamie Foxx's character are having to reconcile with his mother. And they were just throughout the early stages of, her in his body and he in the cat's body, just some amazing life-warming moments here, which is the most important thing in a Pixar movie. Also unrelated, but any chance for more Richard Ayoade in movies and TV shows, whatever, in general, great things. I know his role is minor, but I do appreciate it. You know, his voice in The Mandalorian Season 1, him in this, he's just good in things in general. I mean, I remember when The Watch came out with, like, Ben Stiller, Jonah Hill, Vince Vaughn, and Richard Ayoade. I was most excited for him because I have his great role in Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, which, once again, no one's seen, but you all really should. It's still probably 6 episodes you can find on YouTube. Bada bing, bada boom. And life-changing, weird, dark, dry humor sci-fi show. You should all watch that show. The end of this movie has some amazing moments of finding the deeper purpose of your spark, that thing that inspires you, but that not being necessarily your purpose. You can be inspired by anything, which is important for life, to have inspirations and things, but to actually, no one's going to know what their reason for being here is, which, you know, it's one of those inside out type moments. So many props for sure. And even early on in the movie, they tease it with that guy wanting to be a vet, but becoming a barber, and that being his eventual calling, even though that may not have been his initial spark. But the parallels are great of Joe and the Lost Soul version of 22, as they have that realization of not only the challenges and sometimes hopelessness of life to all the good and excitement that can come out of it. And I really thought Joe was going to become a Lost Soul because he was always focused on this one moment, and I thought that one moment was going to make him like stockbrokery of everything's focused on this one moment. But turns out he had to help 22, who became a Lost Soul, because he pretty much decided that her inspiration was not a purpose or spark, and he was trying to quantify those things. And I know that that's something with the Soul Watchers of, you know, trying to boil things down that we can't understand as they're more celestial beings, but it's all about trying to figure out who you are, and no one can really do it until the end. It's like freeform. What's the Duke Ellington quote in Big Mouth, where it's like something jazz, or maybe freeform jazz or just jazz, where, you know, it's long, it's confusing, and once you finally figure out, it's over. And it's the parallel of life. Great work, The Ghost of Duke Ellington and Jordan Peele. But in general, this movie has some really relatable moments, especially at the end, of seeing what disconnects you from living and prompts you to be a lost soul. Talking and taking and distorting all the bad that anyone and everyone throws at you, and combining it and magnifying it with your own self-doubts and insecurities to make you just hate yourself and really feel those, you know, the cuts of anyone's insecurities and your insecurities, and that just becoming integrated and ingrained in who you are, and just losing yourself, and all that makes you special, makes you what you are and who you can be, no matter how insignificant it may seem or how silly that dream is. Damn, Pixar, you did it again. And I like how the end, you know, you never really know where it's going to be. You're kind of assume what's going to happen to Joe, but giving him another chance to live his life, and this is after he does get to experience this day, this musical performance of a lifetime, and he has an awesome time doing it. The question, I guess, now is, now that he's done that, realize that one moment doesn't just fix your life after that. Even if it was an awesome moment, you don't really know what he's going to do. Is he going to go back to being a musician? He's going to go be a teacher again, because he definitely gets some joy out of teaching. You don't really know what, but you know he's going to live his life to the fullest. Something that he himself was inspired by, a lost soul who never lived on Earth prior. Great stuff here. I wish there was some connection in a post-credit scene of the two of them in the real world after, but maybe that would have been a bit unrealistic. And I know I'm saying that in a animated movie about physical manifestations of souls, but it may have been so unrealistic to have them immediately hang out or see them. Like, I was thinking maybe seeing, like, 30 years down the road, maybe you see some connection between the two. But instead they go in the route of, you know, separate unknown directions and ways in life. Unaware or unsure of what it has in store for both of them, which does tie into the plot and messaging very well. So I'm about it. I'm about Soul. So as the first new superhero movie since my last in theaters movie, Birds of Prey, I was ecstatic for Wonder Woman 1984. The trailer showed action, Pedro Pascal, 80s fashion and music and just fun nostalgia, Pedro Pascal, and apparently Chris Pine being alive again. Yeah, that's always the tricky thing about giving things away before you see them in a movie. Something no more brutal than in Kingsman Golden Circle. And I love everything about those movies in general. And the second one was amazing, trailer and movie. Pedro Pascal's in that one too. He's been crushing it in The Mandalorian as one of the 3 people to play Mando. But the end trailer tease of Golden Circle showing Colin Firth alive after the first one where he famously died, not great. Especially since there was such a nice moment in the movie where Eggsy remembers learning about fancy dining, and you look at it and knowing he's alive somehow, it just feels a little different. And this moment could have been so much better in theaters, not knowing if he was alive and well. Remembering him in that moment and then finding out he's alive later would have been a huge surprise. And while not exactly the same punch setup moment here, it would have been nice to have the surprise intact for viewing of Wonder Woman. The start of the movie, beautiful. All that time at Themyscira in the first movie was sick. It looked beautiful and the action scenes were fire. In this movie, it was like a crazy Olympic triathlon relay that young Diana, the impetuous Amazon that she was, joins in, and she almost wins but ends up getting disoriented by being, I don't want to say a little cocky, but it's a whole don't look back when you're racing thing, and takes a clever shortcut to win, but she doesn't win, and instead she learns a valuable lesson from both Robin Wright and Connie Nielsen, who reprise their roles from the first movie. Unfortunately, they're not in it for more, but at least they're in it a bit, about being truthful and planting the seeds for Dan to learn one of those lessons from this movie that they want us to learn as well. I would call us movie goers, but in 2020, isn't it more movie viewers who are learning this message? It's just kind of what is. Fingers crossed we can get back to COVID vaccines and just get back to the movie theater. It's been too long. I can't wait to get back to the movie theaters. But we just don't get a ton of time in the Amazon land here. Not nearly as much as the last film. But even some is exciting. Hopefully, we will have more and better in the massive Justice League Snyder Cut, which, there's rumors that Part 1 is coming out in March, so here's hoping. We also get a peek at a previous Amazon hero that has sick gold armor that the trailers show Diana in, so just throwing this out there, you have to watch the post-credit scene in this movie. I almost missed that and the one in Mandalorian before. Thankfully, I just had it on and it went to it and I was able to watch it. But in both of these, you're missing some big time either content announcements in Mandalorian or a very good Easter egg that might have dividends in later movies. We don't know. But even seeing more of that just like historical Amazon things is very cool, and hopefully that Snyder Cut battle scene with the mother boxes in Justice League is as great and as loaded with Apocalypse and Darkseid as we thought it would. So once we get to the present, the Easter eggs really hit you. It would have been nice to have some more full-on 80s music, but we definitely feel that it's the 80s, and it's just as amazing here as it was in Stranger Things. And there's some super fun scenes early on. I don't know, when I keep looking at that mall scene though, I keep thinking that amazing deleted scene in X-Men Apocalypse and how much better it would have been with that just 80s nostalgia blast right to the face. Would it have saved the movie? Maybe not, but it would have been easily one of the best scenes in the movie. Easily. But here in Wonder Woman, not in Marvel or Netflix things. So Diana here has to prevent a robbery at the mall, something she's done in Justice League 2 while doing her artifact work. This is one of the scenes that seemingly was filmed by Snyder, so it will indeed make it into the final cut, and maybe we should even call it seemingly the de facto cut, as it's all the interviews from producers, actors, directors around the DCEU are to be believed that everyone's saying that this is sort of the canon version now. I don't know how we have Diana destroying cameras to hide her identity. I feel this is a little crazy since she doesn't have a mask on, and I guess anyone with a disposable Kodak camera isn't around. I mean, that's a big 80s, 90s thing, right? So I always feel that's a little silly watching those things, but it's one of those, I guess it's the whole thing of if she doesn't have a mask, she's clearly who she is, and the fact that people who see her every day in life don't recognize her, that's wild. I guess you could say the same thing about Superman and just a pair of glasses, but this feels a little bit different. But it does track with her character and the ties into the larger DCEU with only seemingly having that one photo of herself that Lex has maybe on a hard drive that she's trying to get and Batman finds and all that stuff that sets up not only her first movie but more into just the grander DCEU. But in this moment, beside the trying to be incognito thing, her saving people and kids and fighting all those would-be robbers while not killing anyone, she's the beacon of hope that we need. She's always the inspiring figure that we love to root for. The brief intro to Kristen Wiig is nice as a woman who is kind of downtrodden in her job and just kind of in life in general, but she's a very kind soul. And Maxwell Lord, previously portrayed by Peter Facinelli on Supergirl, but here as Pedro Pascal. He's so over the top and 80s and cheesy and business guy salesperson, and we never really knew a ton about him, and flushing him out here as a father who wants the world for his kid but just doesn't really know how to do it and seemingly can't do it. The setup is fun and innocuous enough. One of the artifacts from the beginning gets brought in to everyone at the lab. Seemingly, it's a wishing stone, which you watch one guy do it, and this kind of sets up everyone thinking, oh, maybe it works, and maybe it's something hypothetically and skeptically, knowing you have to give something up for this, though, and it's only one wish that any person gets. The guy in the beginning who asks for a coffee, obviously it was, it's a joke, but the whole thing is it takes away something else. So when he asks for a coffee, what does it take away? His ability to stay awake? It almost felt like, it was one of those polar opposite kind of things. You have to go that route, and you just wonder whatever happened to him after that coffee wish. Did he renounce his wish of a coffee? Because it seems pretty innocuous compared to all the other people who are doing their wishes for once Maxwell Lord started kind of broadcasting it and making it a more evil plot. But we know what Diana's going to ask for. We obviously are aware this is what it is. And even though it takes a while for it to materialize, and I don't love the random guy who isn't Steve but sometimes looks like him, and sometimes it's a random person or to everyone else. It's used in the NTs as well, but still, it feels like a super strange and barely explained logistics detail that I don't know if I wanted or needed. I think it would have been fine just making him and not having the other guy in there, but what do I know? More exciting as far as how it happens is seeing how Kristen's character, Barbara, sees what she admires in Diana, not only from defending of her physically, but how she seems popular and elegant and confident. I mean, that's got to be one of the most relatable things. That's the whole thing of we as a society are consumerism and wanting the perfect everything. And if you're going to wish for something, that feels about as normal as you would think. And this is just the only person who even sees her as a person. These are just, it's relatable, it's understandable. But even when they're having these conversations about, how much she appreciates everything that Diana is, it feels a little forced for Diana to talk about all the things she's jealous of Barbara for. But her wish to become like Diana feels right and obvious, understandable. We don't really see how it makes her a cheetah person, but it feels obvious. I mean, I'm not saying I need an over-the-top Amazing Spider-Man 2. He's in a vat of electric eels and becomes an electric blue person, but, I don't know. We see a cheetah once, and it's never really explored, and maybe she likes cheetah print heels, but I never really got why she wanted or became a cheetah person. But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself on that. But once we get past the wishes for the main cats and seeing how desperate Maxwell is and why he needs this thing that he's been searching for this wish stone for some time, not surprising. And it is a good turn that surprised me. Knowing how his character was portrayed in the Supergirl show, definitely different here, but becoming the wish stone, it feels exactly like asking a 3-wish genie for more wishes. I guess it's not illegal or against the rules, but it feels like it should be. From here we have his quest to obtain power, and I think it gets a little confusing at times in this moment. Barbara's turn into the strong and powerful woman, but also a dark evil person is a little more exciting for me. As much fun as Pascal is in the role, I feel like her story is more exciting even if it's less shown visually. But easily the most fun and excitement is the further explored and amazing chemistry between Pine and Godot. And in the first movie, having Diana learn all about the modern world and being a fish out of water tale, here we have it flipped where Steve gets to learn about all the modern world from Wonder Woman. And this movie, it's at its best here. Different in a more whimsical way, but very similar to an amazing deleted scene in the first Avengers movie where Steve is looking at his past and just learning and seeing what this world has become since his original time. You're always going to compare these two characters when you think of the Marvel and the DC versions of people. I don't think you could compare Wonder Woman and Thor necessarily. I get that there's points of it, but I think you always would say that has to be somewhat of a comparison, and you might consider more so Thor and Superman to be the case. That's just my opinion. But here it is, instead of a somber look at how the times are more techy and less personal, instead it's the modern marvels, art, transportation like the escalator and subways, and the fashion trying on scene, hilarious. Chris Pine is great here and really plays the role perfectly. This is just going on a limb here, and if somewhere in that montage, when he introduced her to ice cream, if she could have introduced him to like the modernly more available ice cream, or maybe ice cream is something that is timelessly good, a little ice cream scene from the first one with him being like very excited for ice cream, I think I would have quite enjoyed something like that. Throughout, we see Wonder Woman kind of lose her edge and ability, and I think watching this first, I thought it had something to do with the girl, Barbara, who wanted to be like her and draining Wonder Woman's power, but eventually seeing the cost it took on Pascal, I thought and kind of realized the wishing stone overall has been the root of all evil. I kind of expected another god-like character similar to Thulis to show up in the first one, especially with her immediate fear, Diana, of this god and this issue and this fear, and maybe that's something that will tie into the third movie. I don't know, but I felt, not that I wanted another big old god fight, but I was expecting something more out of that. I mean, she talked about how terrible this god was who made this stone, and, you know, it came a little bit out of left field, and I would say it felt like a dangling tease or thread. But who knows? The third script of the movie, the next movie in this trilogy, is already laid out. Maybe there's some tie there. But seeing her weaken through this time and, you know, actual bullets actually hurting her, and even the lasso kind of waning a little bit, even then I had this nagging feeling that Steve was not going to last, and either this was some lack of acceptance of his death and she could not have, you know, be her and have him. And, like, even though, like, you know, her powers aren't exactly there, the set pieces between that realization and the, you know, weakening of her, sensational. Fighting between trucks and in the White House. Well, he is kind of a President Pascal's character. I think that's what the wish ended up being. All amazing and harder knowing Steve has to help out more, and that his presence is actually making it tougher to function and fight in these battles. Also, sidebar, the fight between Cheetah and Wonder Woman are amazing, both of them. It feels better than, I think, the God fight with Thulis, since it felt like that was maybe too over the top of a big spectacle. It's a little more grounded, and say that with very loose definition of the word grounded in these action sequences, but it definitely felt a little more understated, which is very much appreciated. But it feels like we all knew Steve was going to turn bad and have to be put down, or just have to be given up, or just die again, however possible. She was never going to be able to keep Steve the whole movie and in the end, because the entire time there was this setup that it was going to be temporary, and kind of makes sense with the larger DCEU, and, you know, Batman makes some dig at it, and you figure that's from the first one, and if he's somehow alive in the second one, clearly she had to lose him more than once, which is not easy, obviously. But the way that it does actually end, having him have to give himself up, which is amazingly brave, and, you know, one of the reasons people think he's one of the better Chris's, I know that'll always be a debate of what Chris is the best Chris, but even tougher, having Diana have to do it, and to renounce her wish to lose him again, all to get her power back. And as he said, the world needs her, something that he knew in the first one too, which is why he sacrificed himself to begin with, and, he just has to do it again. And this is where things get wild. The coolest parts in the trailer, beside more Chris Pine, has to be the riding the lightning with her lasso of truth. Like her in the sky, first she's trying to fly, something that I forgot to mention is one of the cooler scenes here visually as well. When Pine is still alive, they steal a jet for him to fly in, and he has experienced all those giddiness and feelings of fun getting to fly a modern plane. One of those classic, kitschy, cheesy Wonder Woman things comes out of all this, though. The OG things. But it doesn't feel forced and kind of sensational here. And the visuals of having the invisible jet and flying through the fireworks and seeing them from the top of the plane has to rival the Themyscira scenes of just those beautiful visuals. And this also builds to her riding the lightning and eventually flying. Once again, some of the cooler scenes in the trailer and in the movie for sure. And those fights with Cheetah and the soldiers before are amazing, and even the end confrontation is fun. And even though she becomes very much Cheetah Lady now, it's not Cat's bad, thankfully, but it's interesting because once again, it doesn't really feel explained as to why she's a cheetah person. But it's fun. But even the end battle, which is a confrontation in its own right and seemingly impossible to overcome, but less of a physical fight, in battle terms, more of an emotional battle of wills and facing realities. Something that all three of our non-Pine main characters have to deal with and understand and accept. And in the end, Diana gets not only Lord and Cheetah to give up their wishes, but everyone else around them to save the world with her lasso of truth. And I feel like it kind of ends in a way that it's not necessarily kill bad guy. It ends in a nice way where no one gets killed. I mean, you got to imagine he's going to get arrested, even though we don't see that, interestingly enough. But having him reconcile with his son, very good, very nice, very strong. And having him, the big issue in the beginning was maybe his emotional availability to provide for his son, but not being able to ever be there for his son. And having that moment of the two of them together, it's just nice, and it feels like there's some nice, good morals here that maybe they're a little over the top and obvious, like hitting the head with you over the top with the things, so you get it, but it doesn't make it any less nice or genuine, I think. Still very much enjoyed it. We don't really know what happens to Cheetah. I guess she goes back to her life. We don't really see what that is. Maybe she'll be in the sequel, who knows? But Max gets, in the light of the time this is coming out, the true spirit of Christmas, as he realizes his son doesn't need the world, he just needs to be in his world. Great message for all to hear, right? And in the spirit of the season as we're in, just having it end with, in a snowy setting, it just feels nice. It's no Harry Potter snow setting, but nothing is, right? But having her after this, kind of be around and, seeing all the joy in the world that, now that people aren't wishing for materialistic things and doing all that stuff, and everything feels nice and humanely fun. Yeah, she's talking and flirting a little bit with this handsome man, who that's his role name, who is Chris Pine the few times that Chris Pine wasn't Chris Pine. It throws things for a bit of a loop, and there's some continuity questions, but in general, things feel hopeful overall. Like, once again, if they had just had Chris Pine be Chris Pine the whole movie, I think that would have been fine, but that's just me. What do I know? And that amazing end moment, thing that we talked about earlier, and once again, spoilers, but the whole episode is spoilers. Seeing someone we assume as Diana save some people, and we find out it was the previous wearer of that gold armor, that Diana just kicked ass and wings all over the place. But this is not Diana, this is not Gal Gadot. This is the Amazonian hero, Asteria, that was teased in the beginning. And she's doing kind of what Wonder Woman is doing, of living in the world in secret, helping where she can. But more importantly is the actress in the role. The OG Wonder Woman, Linda Carter, is this character. And for many reasons, this is amazing. The first Wonder Woman live action, Wonder Woman, spinning around in all her glory, not in this movie, but just, the fun, exciting things where she changes into herself, into her alter ego by spinning around a few times. So good, so fun. And I think that show's on HBO Max now, so eventually we all should dive in deep into that. That and Adam West Batman, of course. And all that is essentially in canon. You know, this actress in this role, it's not Wonder Woman to Wonder Woman, but Linda Carter in canon lore passes on this mantle to Gal Gadot. This post-credit scene is amazing from a continuity and nostalgia standpoint and purposes, but imagine if she's in this role in the next movie in a more pronounced time and screen time, and maybe the two of them can interact, and that may never happen, but there's endless possibilities. And it's a great addition to not only Wonder Woman, but the DCEU as a whole. This movie could never top the first one, but it is enjoyable for sure. This has to be one of my shorter episodes since the DC Fandom episode way back in August, and like the second week I made this show, episode 3, back when I was just starting out. But this was a great way to celebrate not only Christmas, but this super strange Christmas that is a closing out of just a really weird year overall. While this year and season aren't done yet, I just want to say thank you to you listening right now. Thank you for listening to me talk about something I am super passionate about, and I wish you and yours the healthiest and safest holidays possible. And if you've watched either Soul or Wonder Woman 1984, hit me up on social and let me know what you think about either or both on Instagram or Twitter at either knickknackmovies or knickknack_IC. As always, thank you to our host Buzzsprout, Apple Podcasts, and every other directory that lets you hear me ramble about media and such. So until next time, cinephiles.
Are you not entertained?
I think this is going to be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. I don't like goodbyes. Let's just call this see you later, alligator.